that participated in the survey. Obviously, I can't present the information if I don't get the information. So to all of our members, both from the American Society as well as from the RLI, I just want to thank you all for participating in it and giving our clients and the general public the best information possible when it comes to what is happening in the land market. I also just want to give a quick shout out to Elliot Seifert, who is a new employee with Hertz. Without his help to calculate this, I would not be able to get this done in the time that I have. So thank you, Elliot, for doing that. Want to just jump right in. Our survey is based on what is happening right now in the current market. As of March 1st, we ask all participants to talk about bare unimproved land, what they're seeing in their market. I always get the question, what's the difference between high quality, medium, and low quality from a CSR standpoint? We do not determine what the CSR rating is. If we were to say high quality is strictly land that has a 78 CSR and above, unfortunately, Southern Iowa would have very little high quality land. So it is very subjective, and we leave that open to the respondents who are familiar with their area to determine what is high, medium, and low quality. The Realtors Land Institute is an affiliate of the National Association of Realtors, and we're organized basically of realtors that specialize in agricultural land production, as well as farm and land sales, and development and appraisal services. Again, ask the participants as of what the value is as of March 1st for bare unimproved land on a cash basis. The last 6 months, we saw a 1% decrease on average from the combination of high, medium, and low quality land across the state of Iowa. We also saw all of our regions range anywhere from a 2.8% decrease in north central Iowa to a 3% increase in southeast Iowa. The March 1 to March 1 dates from 2018 to 2019, you can see that we had ranges here in central Iowa of down 5.4% to southeast Iowa, where they were basically steady to slightly higher on a year-to-year basis at 0.4% across all the classifications. On a state average, we saw basically a 2.7% reduction in our farmland value since March 1 of 2018. We also collect the information regarding what is happening in our pasture acres. Pasture values over the last 6 months, we saw a number of regions see a slight decrease in values. Southwest Iowa actually saw the largest decrease at 3.2% from our respondents. And we saw similar reduction in Southwest Iowa for their timberland sales, where other parts of the state actually saw some increases, where the biggest was in West Central, up 3.4%. So as you can tell, there's been a lot of variability, a lot of different responses, both high and negative across the state, not just from the cropland, but also the non-tillable timber and the pasture acres that are being sold across Iowa. How does this relate to other surveys that have been conducted? The Iowa State University said their year-end numbers were a 0.8% reduction from November 1st of 17 through November 1st of 18. So we saw a very similar response from Iowa State University to our survey. We also saw the Federal Reserve also indicate a 1% reduction for Iowa farmland in the Chicago Fed rating or surveys from January 1 to January 1. The Illinois chapter of the American Society of Farm Managers, Rural Appraisers, the Realtors Land Institute, and the University of Illinois, their survey indicated down 1 to 5%. This is 1 year old. I wish they would do their survey 1 week prior to ours, then we could put theirs up here. But their survey actually gets released next week for the 2018 year. So that survey was, again, their 2017 survey from January 2017 to December 2017, but still seeing a general softening in the market in the Midwest. So how does it compare? Where have we come from? What was our land values? I always like to go back to March of 2008, where we saw our land values at about $4,276 an acre on average. We got to a high, our March 2013 high was at almost $8,700 an acre, and we've now settled down to about $6,800 an acre on average. I also get the question regarding how does our survey on our dollars per acre average, why is it lower than Iowa State University's? And I wanted just to point this out that the Iowa State University, they actually ask what percentage of land in the county is high quality, medium quality, and low quality, and they do a weighted average for their price per acre statements in all of their county records. So I think they just updated that this last survey. So if you participated in it, they asked what the percentage was for the counties that you were reporting in. We do not do that. Our survey is strictly by the numbers, just high quality is this, medium quality is that, and low quality is a certain number, and just put them together. It's just a straight, here's 3 numbers, divide them by 3. This is what, whoop, hit the wrong one. This is what our number comes out at. So that's why we have that difference between the values of our survey versus Iowa State University survey. So what are some of the positive factors? Some of the positive factors that we have are, obviously, we still have low supply of land available. I think we're seeing some of that start to pick up. I think there's getting a little bit more land coming on the market than what we've seen, but it's very localized. And historically, we're at low interest rates still. It's hard to say that we're at 4 and 5% interest rates for long-term money, and that's higher than what we were or seen in the last 4 to 5 years. But historically, we are still extremely low for our interest rates for borrowing. We also had higher than anticipated yields. Our last presenter commented on higher than anticipated yields helping to support our land values. And I would agree, and that's something that we've kind of been seeing in the market for the last few years, is that higher yields help offset lower prices. We also have the 1031 exchange activity. We'll go into how much of that activity our respondents were seeing, but it was a wide range of how much the market is influenced by 1031 exchanges across the state. And we also have the stock market uncertainty and volatility. We've seen it go up 10%, down 10%, or to 20%, and back up. I mean, it's really been a very volatile cycle in the stock market, so we have a very stable investment option for people. But conversely, what are some of the negatives that we've had? Obviously, interest rates, again, can pop up and talk about that, but we also have lower commodity prices. Those prices still drag. You still have a hard time penciling anything in until the end of the year. You take your APHs, what your average production is, and use the current commodity prices, and it doesn't look all that great. You hope that you have a bumper crop again, just to help offset those lower commodity prices. Obviously, we also get into the ending stocks, which is pushing the prices lower. So it's an up and down cycle with the commodity prices on how it affects our land values. We also have the trade uncertainty. With the tariffs, we don't know when that's going to end, how that's going to be affected in our pricing, how that's going to affect our exports once it is completed. And anytime you add uncertainty to the market, it actually weighs on buyers' decisions. I talked about the interest rates increasing. They're still historically low, but they are starting to creep up, so it is making some people second guess maybe purchasing a property that maybe if they had a little bit lower interest rate, they might have just jumped on and done that. We've seen roughly about a 40% increase in our interest rates over the last year and a half or so. kind of touched on tighter operating capital as you pencil out what your potential income is going to be. It is awfully tight right now. And then the trend to lower rents. Some of the investors that are wanting to have a certain rate of return look at different properties to find out what they can get. And if you have a trend of lowering rents, the rate of return may not be there for some of those investors to come in on those medium and lower quality pieces, which seem to have a stronger push down than what we see higher quality. Who's buying? Our respondents indicated that roughly 77% of the farms that are purchased are by farmers. Most of the time that's really kind of in the immediate area. A lot of the times we'll see farmers within an 8 to 10 to 15 mile radius of the property be the likely buyer of a property. We still have the investors are accounting for roughly 18%, and then we have 5% of others, which may be someone that's coming into farming, a new farmer, or adversely someone that maybe is doing a sale leaseback or something, but to an investor that may have an interest in doing so. So it's the others kind of all over the board. We don't always get exactly what that is from you, but that's what the respondents said. According to Iowa State University survey, they saw 72% of the buyers were farmers in their November survey, and 21% were the investors. We talked about the ranges with the 1031s. We see about an average of about 20% of the sales that take place are influenced by a 1031 buyer. They may not be purchased by a 1031 buyer, but they're influenced. They may be the contending bidder or second contending bidder that helped push that price up to where it's sold for to maybe a local farmer. But they do have some type of influence in a lot of these sales. Who's selling? Again, the highest number is estates and trust. We have seen some farmers selling. Some of them may want to just have a little bit better operating income, a little bit more cash on hand. But we're also seeing an increase in sale leasebacks. So where a farmer wants to have a little bit of operating income but doesn't want to lose control or the ability to raise a crop on those acres, they're looking for investors to buy, and they're willing to rent them back at a certain price for a period of years. We are seeing a lot of activity or talk about that, so that's definitely increasing over the last year. We also have investors that are trading assets, finding alternative options. Thought I had a buyer for some farm ground that said they definitely wanted to buy farm ground. We showed them about 5-6 different farms, and they ended up buying a condo or a rental apartment building down in Florida. They just said the rate of return was better, and they wouldn't mind going down and staying in one of their own units during the winter. So they're finding different options, and some of them are looking to sell their land that they have here that is strictly an investment and find a better rate of return. So rate of return, what are some of the buyers wanting to have? A lot of the buyers we're seeing are wanting to have somewhere around the 2 to 4% rate of return for cropland acres. The average response basically totaled out to about 2.9% rate of return on their investment in cropland. CRP, we're seeing a little bit wider range than what we've seen in the past. It used to be fairly close to the 3.5% to 5% range, and now we're seeing it widen just a little bit from anywhere from 3% rate of return up to 6% rate of return. So some people are getting bullish and just don't want to pay the price, so they're looking more of a 6% rate of return. Obviously that makes a lower sale price. Others may want to get into the right piece and have a stable income for a period of years and willing to accept a 3% rate of return. But the average was right at 4.3%. So out of the sales that the respondents had, it basically totaled out to 4% rate of return, 4.3% rate of return on those CRP annual payments. Recreational land is still selling. In some spots it's really hot. There's really a lot of activity on it. A lot of out of the area investors are looking for a place to go. And you also have a lot of the hunting outdoorsmen that want to find their little piece of heaven. We still see county conservation boards and DNR purchasing some of this recreational land, and the activity has been steady. Sales volume compared to 2017, we see steady, same, slightly less, so it's kind of all over the board. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen is that the markets are extremely volatile. And I've given this example before, and David Whitaker's here somewhere, but David and I sold 2 farms, same day, same time, same county. It ended up working out that way. We didn't realize it until about a week ahead of the auction. And we've decided that we were both in different markets, and our quality of farms were similar from a CSR2 standpoint. However, his property had a little bit more of waterways through it, a little bit more of inefficient, but he sold the heck out of the farm, but the farm sold for $7,700 on average for an 80-something CSR farm. And I think for what it was, that was a good sale that day. 11 miles away, I ended up selling a 160 that had a similar CSR in the low to mid 80s. Ended up selling for 11.1, 11 miles away. And I like to share that because you're talking the same county, same day, same time. The difference is every 8 to 10 miles, you have a different set of buyers that are willing to buy and participate in that area. My farm that I sold took off. We really thought it was probably worth around $9,250 to $9,500 an acre. It just happened to be in an area where there was a lot of pent-up demand and livestock producers that wanted to purchase in that immediate area. Sometimes you just kind of, the hardest thing to do sometimes as an auctioneer is not smile too much while you're up there auctioning. That was one of those cases. It was a great day for those sellers. So volatility. Volume, we're seeing it all over the board. Really, I can't really say one area is hotter than another because you can see it in different counties. So I'll open that up here at the end and get some feedback from you all because I learned at these just as much as you do. Listings versus auctions. Auctions are still the primary method for high quality sales. If you have a high quality property, auction is still the preferred method for selling it. We are seeing an increase in private listings, more for the medium and lower quality type of soils in cropland. Right now, we saw basically 60% auctions and 40% private listings. What's going to happen with the farmland market over the next 1 to 3 years? Very dependent on production and crop prices. But we also get a very mixed bag of responses from different individuals, from steady to higher, to flat to steady to lower. So there's not much direction, but the best ability, or the best term that I utilize is volatility. There is a lot of volatility out there. Some areas you're going to see the market pick up. Some areas you're going to see it really soften, and it's going to be very dependent on those production yields and weather patterns that we have. This is the trend line, cropland prices, and this is based off of this survey. And again, I visit about it every year, but I just like to point it out because it shows us where we've been and where we might be going. But we ended up taking the RLI surveys every 6 months in the early 2000s, from 2000 to about 2009 and 10, and put it on a trend line. That's what the dotted line is, the trend line from 2000 to 2010. And then this is what our land values did. We ended up increasing well above our trend line yield, but back in 2015-16, we actually came really close to where we were back in line with our trend line from the first decade. So it's kind of a nice line, a nice visual to see how far we've corrected, but yet we're still supported with this trend line from what we saw prior to the increase in high commodity prices. So I know I'm in front of you guys in lunch, so we'll just go through the conclusions real quick. What we ended up seeing, again, land values are mixed, stable to softer. Sales have been very volatile across different areas. Negatives for the land market, commodity prices, tariffs, the uncertainty in the government. The Farm Bill was I need to actually change that because that was a positive that we were able to get a new Farm Bill actually passed. It's been a while, so it was great to have the Farm Bill actually get passed and keep the 1031 exchanges, which we're really kind of on the block there for a little bit. So for all of you that did support and send in letters of support of the 1031s, I commend you for doing so, because they do like to hear from us that are practicing, utilizing, and our clients that are utilizing the 1031, how much it does impact our business. So thank you for sending those letters to our congressional individuals. Positive land factors, farmers still have some cash on hand, some equity. The Iowa State Survey indicated about a year ago, last June, that 82% of Iowa farmland is considered debt-free, according to their survey, which talks volumes when you start talking about the buying power that individuals have. But there's still a very limited supply of land on the market, so their opportunities to buy high quality land are somewhat limited, and some of the investors and farmers are willing to travel a little bit to obtain those pieces if they fit their portfolio. Farmers, again, are the primary buyers, and the future is uncertain, but the market, I would say, is currently steady across the state of Iowa, with some areas seeing a little bit of strength and weakness, but overall steady market. I would say that my thoughts on southeast Iowa, why we are seeing a 3% increase there, is they were under drought for the last 2.5 years, and somewhat severe drought in areas. And about August, they started receiving some rainfall. I think they actually had a little bit more positivity. They actually had a little bit more positive outlook on moving forward once they had some rain, and they had maybe some pent-up demand that they were waiting to buy the right piece after things sorted it out, after the weather sorted out a little bit. And we've seen some $12,000 sales in southeast Iowa, which we have not seen in years past. So there are some very strong pockets there. And I'm just going to go to questions, and I'll bring up, is anyone from southeast Iowa that would like to comment just a little bit further on the market in their area, and if there's any additional factors that might show that increase? Yes, sir.
Isolated 80 north of Toyota, and that's a hot, very, very rich land, 5 and 6 generation, money held. 80 acres, 86.6 CSR, 12,700 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, very strong area. Like you said, you get some of that land that's been held for a long time. When it does come available, the people in the area do wish to, extend and go after some of that. Jim?
I'll just add to that. We had very good corn yields, but our soybean yields are probably 5 to 10 bushel better in some areas than what we had the previous year. And so certainly much better yields, especially on the soybean side, help support the market.
So for those that didn't hear, he commented that the soybean yields were 5 to 10 bushel better than what they had seen. And again, those August rains can help put those additional pods on those bean plants to help get those higher yields. Again, higher yields help offset lower commodity prices. And Jim, you did bring up a good point. They also had a good year of production, where the last few years they've suffered in their yields. Any other comments for southeast Iowa? How about north central Iowa, where we saw the 2.8% reduction? My understanding is, obviously we were at 2.8% reduction in north central and 2.7 reduction in northeast Iowa. And the weather patterns of having an extensive amount of rain up there for a long period of time would be what my thought is of why that market might have seen just a little bit of a softer return last year. And would anyone care to make an additional comment? Yes, sir.
I would say that particularly in Cassuth County and the surrounding counties, the rain had a huge factor. I've got a farm in central
he said 55 inches of rainfall in Cassuth County in his area. That will put a damper on yields and attitudes for whether they want to buy any additional ground. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
I think the medium and low quality ground drove down the whole average too. I think the high quality land stayed pretty resilient.
Yes, the comment was that the medium and low quality pulled down probably the average in the area, and you're correct. The medium and low quality from the surveyors' responses, medium quality was down 3.3 in North Central, and low quality was down 5.8, where high quality was down just 0.7. So your thoughts showed up in the survey as well. Thank you. Any general comments regarding the overall survey or any areas that you saw or have questions on?
How many responders did you have?
So typically I get about 150 responses, and this year I was a little bit light of that. I had about 130, but just relaying and looking at the responses, we had plenty of responses that really lined up very well with what our September numbers were, and indicated that the market was depicted in the responses. So a little bit lighter on the responses, but still about 130.
I'll throw one out, Kyle.
Yes, Chief.
You mentioned the timber and pasture and the conservation kind of stuff. The state has been, the legislature's been talking about that, about the credits that go with that. Is that something you guys are keeping an eye on? Is that any impact at all?
I know that there was a House bill that was introduced talking about local governments not having the ability, or the state governments not having the ability to buy land. Obviously, it's just a House deal, so it's something that we need to watch because they're basically trying to, if I remember right, they were trying to do away with a lot of the public lands.
Yeah.
And so it's something we're gonna have to watch, because the DNR and those county conservation boards are good buyers for the recreational pieces. They do bring value to the sellers that have those pieces, and in some areas they just don't have the those acres, you know, the public lands to go hunting on. So I think it's important to keep an eye on. As of right now, haven't put too much emphasis in it or see how it could affect, but yeah, it may have a big impact on our recreational lands depending on what happens, but until it happens, I'm kind of watching from afar. Anyone else? Yes, Jim.
What are you seeing for the returns those investors want on the leasebacks on the buying farms?
So the sale leasebacks, he's asking what type of returns they're looking for, and you know, we continue to get 3 to 3.5% is what they would like, because they're tying into one operator for a period of a few years, and so you are seeing a little bit higher return that they want, but it seems to be somewhere around the 3 to 3.5%. Sometimes it's very difficult to line up a seller with a buyer, and because obviously they want to sell their land at a fair price, but that also requires them to pay a little bit higher cash rent than maybe what they want. So there's lots of negotiations that go into those sale leasebacks, but right now what I'm seeing is close to 3% is what they would like. Anyone else?
The 1031 exchanges, is it farmers swapping parcels of land, or is it investors coming out of a different thing, or?
I see a lot of the farmers doing 1031 exchanges from different sales that they've had, maybe not in the state of Iowa or in the immediate area, but from other, you know, avenues. But they, whether it's a family farm that they owned in Nebraska, but they are actually operating here, you know, selling something and moving it. But I see a lot of farmers utilizing that tool. There's definitely investors that are utilizing it. But again, with 77% of the farms being purchased by farmers, we feel like that's probably the majority. Would anyone else care to comment that? Yes, Roger.
I'd say it's primarily farmers that are either essentially moving land closer to home or upgrading in quality.
Yep. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Foxconn sold some ground in Wisconsin for $50,000 an acre. That pushed some people down here to buy farm ground. And Microsoft, Apple, and Facebook bought some, paid some really big prices for farm ground around Des Moines, and they're buying ground other places in Iowa too.
Yep. Jim's comment was there was a lot of businesses that came in that bought farm ground, bare land. Did you say Foxconn?
Yeah, Foxconn.
Up in Wisconsin,
Racine,
which,
Wisconsin.
So those individuals that were the landowners there, they sold for about $50,000 an acre, so that definitely allows them to, you know, transfer and potentially pay, you know, 5 to 1 in that situation, to buy high quality land in northeast Iowa if they wanted. Also with the development, with Apple down in the Waukee area, that's definitely given, those landowners there the opportunity to move out and buy, you know, 3 to 4 to maybe even 5 times the acres that they had there as well. So you get a lot of those companies that come in to buy. Those landowners, you know, can conduct a 1031 and be able to expand their footprint as well. And it's, if you have 100 acres and you're trying to buy 400 of good quality, high quality land, you do have to travel just a little bit of a ways to find some of that, because you may only see a 160 or an 80 that comes up that they're able to buy. So it expands the footprint of the 1031 buyers out from the area. Anyone else? With that, I thank you again for participating in responding to the survey request. I know it was a short timeline, but if you have any questions, I'll be around most of the day. Thank you all.
Thanks.